The window is closing for the Golden State Warriors to capitalize on prime Steph Curry. Is the championship window even still open? We discuss that now on Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So glad to have you here. I am your host, Kylen Mills, a play-by-play broadcaster, host, reporter for the Big Ten Network, formerly the Pac-12 Network, NBC Sports Bay Area, and many more. And I'm joined by a special guest today, KRON sports reporter and anchor, Erin Wilson. So glad to have you. Really quickly, 3 things to look forward to in today's show, folks. Is the Warriors championship window still open? The $1 million question, or is it too late? Is it time to say goodbye to this team being title contenders for this current era, that is? If the window is still open, what must change? Erin will give her takes. Also, we'll hear exactly what she thinks about the possible Jimmy Butler fit, as I talked about in yesterday's episode. All right, well, Erin, thanks so much for being here. So glad to have you on. It's been so exciting to watch your career as you've made yourself at home at KRON and gotten to cover the Warriors. How's it going?
Thank you, Kylen. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to talk Warriors. Of course, you know I love ball, so I'm all ears, and everything that we can talk about here, I'm excited to talk about. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, glad to have you. Ball is life, and I know you're a baller, and we appreciate that. And I don't think I should tell the fans too much, but you used to cover the Memphis Grizzlies, which is not super popular with the Warriors fan base, but we'll let it slide.
That is true. I used to cover the Memphis Grizzlies, and I am a Memphis native, so I do not hesitate to let Dub Nation know where my loyalty lies. However, I do also very, very much love the Warriors, and I've loved covering the Warriors, so I'm a little split. My loyalty lies with both teams now, so I don't think home is happy about that, but I love it. So
okay, all right. Warriors fans, still tune in. Erin Wilson is one of us. Let's start the conversation. Is the Warriors championship window still open? It's the $1 million question. It's been speculated on so much over the last 2 years since the Warriors won that 2022 championship. And then the following 2 regular seasons, they could barely get over 500. They have Steph Curry. They have Klay Thompson. They have Draymond Green. The starters from that 2022 championship team returned, yet they couldn't get anywhere close to that level of success, leaving so many people asking why. And now here we are, this team needing to majorly retool heading into 2024, and there's still no clear direction. How are they going to rebuild this roster? What's the game plan in this offseason? So in your eyes, do you think it's possible for the Warriors to even still have that window open and to be title contenders looking ahead to the next 1 or 2 or however many seasons we still see Steph in his prime?
I do think that when you think about the Warriors and you look at the Warriors setup, as long as Steph Curry is on this team and playing at the level that he's playing, there's always at least a crack in that championship window. But I do think that a lot of reconstruction needs to happen in order for them to solidify an actual championship coming back to the Bay Area, because there are so many pieces I do think that they either need to polish up or bring in to make sure that they are competitive in this league that we have, especially in the West. The West is really hard to make it out of. And you have Steph Curry. So you have one of the best shooters of all time, one of the best point guards of all time, one of the best players of all time, but you need some people surrounding him. So, you know, they need some help. Should I jump into why I think what I think that they need?
You can go ahead. Yeah, you can go after it. We'll continue to break it down throughout the show, but if you've got a point to make, go for it, Erin. What's your strong feeling?
My feeling is an unpopular opinion, apparently, but I think
we like unpopular opinions.
I think that they need a big man. I think everyone wants a scoring guard to join in on the Warriors roster. I don't think that's what they need. I think they polish up on Kuminga, who shows that he can be pretty dominant out there once he gets comfortable. They have Steph Curry. Klay Thompson is still up in the air right now, but then they have guys like Moses Moody, who I also felt like deserved more minutes, but he may not be able to stay if they're able to bring in some size. I personally was a little disappointed at the trade deadline that Siakam went to the Pacers. I thought that was a prime opportunity to help the Warriors in this season in a much better way than they ended it. But when you look at the league, what teams are dominant? What teams made the playoffs this year? Every single one of them had a dominant big man. You're talking about Nikola Jokic. You're talking about Karl Anthony Towns. Giannis didn't make it deep, but they had, and Giannis didn't play, and that probably changed a lot of things. But you got Anthony Davis. Anytime I'm covering the Warriors and we're doing a preview to a game, anytime it seems as if the Warriors are the underdog, if you will, in that matchup, a lot of the times, one of the biggest reasons is the matchup on size. That is one of the hardest things to get past for the Warriors when you got Draymond Green, who's the enforcer, of course, having to kind of play the 5. I think he does better when he plays the 4, and he has a big man down there that can bang, get rebounds, get the ball out, and allow them to play at their own pace. When the Warriors control the pace, they control the game.
Girl, you are preaching to the choir. Yes, I have been calling for size. I have been saying that all throughout the last 2 years. I mean, looking back at it, it's incredible that the Warriors won that 2022 championship with Draymond Green and Kevon Looney, because you look at Kevon Looney, he's an undersized center. He's not super athletic. He doesn't have outside skills, to your point about what we're seeing around the league in terms of bigs that now have perimeter abilities. They have more athleticism, and that's what teams are looking for, and they're younger. I keep saying this and I feel bad, but Kevon Looney to me is the oldest 28-year-old in the league because his legs just sometimes, I don't know, man, he makes it look tough. He has undergone a couple hip surgeries, so we love Loon Dog, but man, to have him going up against some of these elite bigs that you're mentioning, it's incredible that they walked away from that 2022 season with the championship. Also, when you look at two bigs and Draymond Green and Kevon Looney playing alongside each other that are not offensive threats. To me, like looking back, that's also crazy because the Warriors want to space the floor and they have two players on the floor at the same time. I don't want to say that you don't have to guard. I mean, Draymond Green has worked on his three-point shot. We saw it a little bit more this last season. Yeah, okay. But still, to have both of those guys alongside each other in the front court and neither of them are offensive threats, to me, it makes it even more incredible they did what they did in 2022. And to me, it shows that the margin for error is continuing to get smaller because these other teams, they're getting bigger and they're getting better and they're getting more athletic and they're getting younger than that 2022 season. Like so many things had to go right for the Warriors to make that run, which, like I said, looking back on it makes it so incredible. And now we've seen some of the cracks in the armor start to get bigger. And that margin for error is now this big. And any little thing going wrong, the Warriors aren't able to carry through and win some of those close games they were able to win in past situations. And I don't want to keep going back to 2022, but like, I do feel like looking back at it, I didn't necessarily appreciate in the moment how amazing it was that they did what they did.
Well, here's the thing about 2022, in my opinion, because at that time I was actually covering the Grizzlies when the Grizzlies and the Warriors were in that series.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it was the one thing that we noticed was Andrew Wiggins was huge in that season for the Warriors. Yep. He really, really was tapped in. And that is one thing that they've been missing in the last two seasons. He's been the total opposite. He's not been locked in whatsoever. He's taken a leave of absence in some way, shape, or form the season prior to this past season. And then this season, we saw spurts of him where it looked like, okay, Wiggins is on his way back. And then the next game, it's like, where is Wiggins? He's out there, but where is he? There's that. I definitely think Otto Porter was a huge reason that they were able to, have people they were able to spread the floor and they were able to get that shooting going because everyone knows that's the bread and butter for the Warriors, the shooting. But in order to have efficient shooting and great shooting, when you're up against strong defensive teams, you have to have guys that have to honor everyone on the floor. And just like you mentioned, if you have two big men that are not going to shoot, what does that mean? Or if you have, even this season, when Kuminga would get the ball out on the perimeter, they would sag off of him. I was a guard that could not shoot. And I know the exact feeling of having the ball and they sag off of you because they know that you can get to the rack, but you can't, and you're not confident in your shot. And when they sag off of you, that makes you even less confident in your shot. So 9 times out of 10, you're going to miss that shot if you take it because now it's like, oh, they don't even respect me out here. They're leaving me wide open. And now they're packing down on other people. So it's almost essentially a 4-on-5 game. And so it's tough there. So those are some of the biggest reasons I think that they were successful in 2022 versus what's been happening the last two seasons. But then on top of that, like I just said, Jordan Poole was an X factor for the Warriors that year.
Oh, that might be a hot take among Warriors fans. I love it.
That may be a hot take, but Jordan Poole definitely, not only, people have to understand that when you're out there on the floor, the points you put up, that does have an effect on the team, but also the energy you bring, the how you rowdy the crowd, or rally the crowd, things you do out there, that all plays a part in the momentum that carries a team through to make a win, especially in tight games. And Jordan Poole definitely made some stellar plays that year that had the crowd going, that got the guys boosted, that kept the momentum high, that kept everything kind of flowing into the direction of the Warriors. Now, unfortunately, they saw that potential in him and they paid him. And he said, well, I'm rich now. I can kick my feet up and do what I want in some way, shape, or form, or at least that's what it seems when we hear the whispers about what went wrong with Jordan Poole and then what continued to go wrong when he was traded to the Wizards. So, it's like, right now, I think looking at the Warriors team now, if we're looking forward, I know we're talking about everyone wants we want a big marquee star to come in and add to this Warrior team. I think they need the exact opposite. I think they need a quiet big man that wants to bang in the paint, that wants to make sure that he gets all the offensive rebounds that he can get, that makes it very extremely hard for the opposing team to get offensive rebounds of their own, get the ball out, feed a guy like Kuminga who wants to wolf. He wants to be the wolf out in front of everyone else to get the easy bunnies on the other end of the floor. And then, of course, now everybody's scattered trying to rush back on defense, and that's where Steph Curry shines, because now he, like I said, controls the game, and at that point they can do what they want. They can feed one or the other, work that defense, work by working the offense that they work, because that's the thing. You have to keep an eye on Steph. He's constantly moving all ways, and he can shoot from anywhere, right? So if you have 5 guys out there that you have to pay attention to, that just works all the better for an aging Steph Curry. And that's another thing I kept saying all season long. Like, everyone thinks, okay, we have Steph Curry, we're always going to have hope. But health is a real thing in this game. And how many healthy seasons do you have with Steph Curry being able to play at the level that he's playing at with the load that he's having to carry? You don't want to put that much on him, and especially as he gets older. So he needs some help out there, and I think a big man would do it.
All valid points. I can't wait to hear as well, coming up in just a few, some other reasons or things that you think the Warriors could do to help this roster. Because in addition to a big man, I also think they're in the difficult position of trying to marry the youth with the older players. And when you look at some of these teams that are title contenders, you have to find that middle ground and those middle pieces, the guys who can handle those higher minutes. As you pointed out, you cannot have Steph, Clay, Dre being 37, 38, 39 minutes a night in order to win basketball games. Mm-hmm. But I'm looking forward to getting into all that. I do want to touch on one more point, though, here coming up. Our job can be so stressful. That's one thing about working in TV news and broadcast in any way, shape, or form, is that there's a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress that comes with it. I'm on the go constantly. A lot of times I've got back-to-back plane rides. I've got trips coming up. And it's so hard just to be able to manage all of the expectations. Also, you're under the gun when you're on air. You can't make mistakes. You have to get all the facts right. It just can really start to weigh on you if you don't find a way to get all of that out and to deal with that type of stress. One great way to get all of that out is by talking to someone, whether that be a friend, whether it be a family member, or even better is talking to a professional who can help provide you some coping mechanisms to deal with that anxiety. Now, if you're thinking of starting therapy, definitely encourage you to give Betterhelp a try. That is one way that you can talk to someone, a professional, who can provide some of that advice. It's totally convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Get it off your chest with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Okay, so I'm on the same page as you about 2 things. First of all, the Warriors have a chance as long as Steph Curry is healthy. I don't think anyone who knows anything about the NBA is going to count him out if he's healthy. That's a big caveat because he's getting into his mid to late 30s. So that's something 100% you have to be aware of and continue to manage. But if he's healthy, I don't think you can count the Warriors out for being title contenders. But how many more years realistically can he handle this type of workload and continue to play at this elite all-star type of level? I'm thinking 2 more seasons. Like, seriously, 2 more. once you get into those late 30s, not saying he's still not going to be able to play, but like at some point you got to start dialing it back a little bit. He'll still be able to shoot. That's one thing that translates. That skill doesn't go away as you get older, but like he covers so much ground on the floor. You pointed out how much movement he does. He's running. I'm trying to remember. I've seen articles that have shared the exact amount of miles that he runs during games because at practice they track that kind of stuff. But he covers a lot of ground, and it is a lot of miles in the legs, and with each year, he's getting older and older, and it's going to be a bigger challenge for his body to be able to handle that. But if he's healthy, I still think they have a chance. I 100% agree, add a big. I would like to see more of an athletic stretch big. Lauri Markkanen is someone that I've talked about on the show that I love just because you get that floor spacer. And to be honest, you pointed out Otto Porter Jr., and that's a big reason why he was so critical, even coming off the bench for the Warriors, being able to provide some size and some length, but also be able to shoot the three ball to keep stretching the floor. I love that you're nodding your head. I'm just getting more confidence as my rant keeps going. But in addition to that, I also think managing the age of this roster is going to be something that is crucial as this team looks forward and tries to find that right window, the right balance of maintaining youth, developing, setting the team up for the future, but also taking advantage of Steph before he goes off and sails into retirement. So to me, there has to be some middle ground pieces. And if you look at that 2022 championship run, a player you brought up is Andrew Wiggins, 26, 27, 28 years old. I look at him as being that guy, but where's Andrew Wiggins gone? You look back to the championship run, you look back to the series against Boston, like there were games where he was the second best player on the floor. I mean, there were even people conjecturing like, hey, if Steph doesn't step up, he might somehow, Andrew Wiggins, take the finals MVP away from him because he had a couple of really dominant games. And of course, people like to joke about it because Andre Iguodala won it from Steph, and everyone's like, how is Steph not won a finals MVP? So a little bit of that was joking, but still, like that's how well he was playing. And now that he's completely fallen off, I feel like it's super important now that you look for another wing. I do think they need to try to upgrade from him, and then you need a consistent secondary scorer. And Klay Thompson, unfortunately, is no longer that guy. I think he's done an incredible job battling back from the injuries he's dealt with. They are body-changing injuries, so like this is no hate to Klay, but he's not the same player that he was. He's not able to consistently shoot the way he was. Now, the big challenge is how do you bring in a really good big, whether it be an athletic big, more of a banger, kind of what you're talking about, a secondary scorer, a wing who can be an upgrade from Andrew Wiggins, assuming Andrew Wiggins comes back and is the same inconsistent self he is next year. It's just going to be a major challenge, and they're going to have to move a ton of pieces. I mean, for you, do you see that, or do you think or agree that like multiple new starters are going to have to brought in? Because that's where I'm at. Like, I think I would love to see JK start. I think Steph Curry, but like after that, like anything's on the table in my opinion.
Pretty much. So the way I see it, JK, I definitely think would help if he was able to consistently be in the starting five. I do believe that, let's say it was Steph Curry. Let's say Klay stays. Let's say he stays. And let's say Chris Paul is moved. And I know some people would like to see Chris Paul stay, but if we think about it, there are a lot of other teams in the NBA right now who need a floor general like Chris Paul to run things without Chris Paul being a second tier on the second squad floor manager for the Warriors. You get what I'm saying? And so I do think that that's an asset that they could move to help out with who they bring in. Now, as far as that Moses Moody, I would hate to see him honestly leave the Warriors, but he's all season long, I've been saying that it is amazing how inconsistently he was played and how consistent his production continued to be. And I think that any team is blind if they don't see that out of Moses Moody, to see how many points he could give them if they consistently gave him a role out there, whether it is on the starting squad or whether it is the second tier squad or the second group. I still think that he's an asset that could also be moved to help bring guys in to add to the Warriors starting five. Because I do think if the Warriors are able to bring in a strong starting five, like you just mentioned, including Draymond Green, a big man, less of a marquee wing, but one that is a consistent scorer, you know, if they are able to do that, I think they would shape up to be in a lot better position than they were this past season. Because I do think that's what was missing. And I do think Klay Thompson, they should find a way to keep him here. I think, one, for legacy purposes, but two, Klay Thompson is not out. You know, he's down, but he's not out, you know. And so part of that is a mental game. Basketball is very mental, and I think this year was a tough mental year for Klay Thompson. And we still saw sparks. But I think whenever you have to sit down with your coach and he says, look, I want to talk to you about how you should start to change your perspective as you near the end of your career, you're having, and you admit that out loud on camera, you're having a mental year, a tough year. And that has a huge bearing on your production on the floor, because all it takes is a split second for you to worry about the flick of your wrist or your shot form when you let it go. And that little small piece of a thought changes the whole way that shot goes up and comes down. And so I think that plays a huge part. So I think Steph Curry, Jonathan Kuminga, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, and a big would really help them. And then maybe they add in some role players that help, a better, like I said, not an Otto Porter Jr., but someone that could play the same type of role playing position. Not a Jordan Poole, but somebody that's young and upcoming as a point guard that can be as dominant and as consistent when Steph Curry is not on the floor to keep the momentum up. Something like that, I think, would be better. And I asked Mike Dunleavy Jr. myself in the exit interviews, guys wanting to go after a big man. And in so many words, he didn't say no, but he did kind of say not necessarily. He said, we're open to it, but that's not our focus. So I'm just like, what am I seeing that no one else is seeing? I don't get it. I don't know. But I'm stuck on, and I'm standing firm on a big man. And to be honest with you, this sounds crazy. I know some people are like, Erin, what? And then some people are like, oh, Erin, what? You might be on
You're onto something.
I feel like Steven Adams is a cheaper big man that could help. I think that he's someone that could really give a DeMontis Sabonis a run for his money, a Rudy Gobert a run for his money. And how do we keep Draymond on the floor? Well, he doesn't have to worry about battling with these big men and getting the guys going and getting suspended for 10 games or more. I think all of that plays a part into the success of the Warriors, because do I think that they have a huge upside? Yes, but they have to tap into it.
Yeah. Big man, top of your wish list. I think that's totally legit. Maybe lower down the wish list is a consistent wing who's a scorer, better role players, upgrading those guys. Do you think that would be enough? Well, I have one wing who's been in some conversation surrounding the Warriors, or at least in the rumor mill, and we're going to get into that in just a moment. All right, it is the time of year. NBA Finals are going on. Baseball is in full swing. And that means that if you want to add a little extra juice, you want to have some extra fun with some of the sports going on, that you can head over to FanDuel and place some bets. I had to phone a friend for this because, listen, I am going to be completely honest. I'm not the most literate in terms of sports betting, but my husband is. And he's got a really good MLB future bet. -45, Milwaukee Bucks to win the NL Central. Here's the deal. Brewers, let's just say Bucks. I meant Brewers.
Yeah.
Brewers. We're talking baseball. I've got Bucks on the mind. He said they're one of two teams that almost always wins the division. As a Cubs fan, can confirm, unfortunately. Cardinals are currently really bad. In addition, Pirates, still the Pirates, Reds and Cubs, both dealing with a ton of injuries. Once again, I can confirm that, have a number of deficiencies. So put a bet on the Milwaukee Brewers. That's a good one that could win you some money. Now, FanDuel Sportsbook is the place to go to do all of that. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet on everything from the NBA Finals MVP to who's going to hit one out of the park. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and add a big win to your summer bucket list. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, so you know what? How about this? It is time to dive into the one prospect who's been, the one player who's been somewhat linked to the Warriors. Again, these are all still conjectures because it's that time of the offseason. Free agency hasn't officially opened. Trade rumors are swirling. People like to talk because we have to have something to talk about for those of us whose teams aren't playing in the NBA Finals. And Jimmy Butler's a name that I brought up and did a whole show on yesterday. And I'm curious as to your take. Is he someone that you would be willing to offload a couple of young pieces to bring in? I mean, you're saying a consistent wing who can score. He can definitely score. Is he consistently healthy? Maybe not. But what are your thoughts on Jimmy Butler and some of the rumors going around that the Warriors would be interested in having conversations with Miami?
That's my caveat. That's my caveat when it comes to Jimmy Butler. Obviously, just seeing the Heat without Jimmy Butler this year in the playoffs, you could tell that his impact is undeniable. He is one of the best in the league right now as a scorer, as a wing, just being able to command attention on the floor, but he wasn't healthy. And so that was a very, very short stint in the playoffs for the Heat. And what does that mean now for the Warriors if they bring him in? If they bring him in, he's going to have to bear the brunt of a load, because that is where they will be relying. They will be relying heavily on Steph. And then the number 2 they'll be relying on is Jimmy Butler. And then they'll then sprinkle in Jonathan Kuminga. And then Klay Thompson. I think that would be the hierarchy in which they're looking for some production. And that is a lot of games to be looking for someone to produce who has a history of injuries. And then there are injuries that are hard to come back from and hard to keep from tweaking as you continue to play long minutes in tough games in the Western Conference. As that he's in the Eastern Conference, so that helps him some. But like in the Western Conference, it's a much larger load. And if you have knee injuries and you're coming back from things where you've had knee repairs, that can be tough. And I just think it was one of those things where it is a high risk, high reward, but I do think it's more of a risk than a reward if the Warriors bring Jimmy Butler in. I mean, I love Jimmy Butler. I think he's fun.
I like him
to watch. But he's undeniably 34 years old, and he has a history of injuries, and we know how this game goes. And like I said, it'd be one thing if they were bringing him in and asking him to do minimal things on the team because they have such a stacked team. That's not the case. They would be asking him to do a lot, quite a bit, actually. Like I said, it'd be him and Steph would be the main focal points of this team if they brought him in. And I just don't know that we wouldn't be setting ourselves up for failure if we expect him to be able to make it through a whole 82-game season and then through a playoff run healthy, And so it's like one of those things where you make that bet, you take that chance, and then you fall flat if history repeats itself. Which
100%,
so
yeah,
I'm not really high on Jimmy Butler coming to the Warriors. My personal opinion, there was a lot of talk about KD returning. Despite the season he had this past season, I would like to see that more than I think I would like to see Jimmy Butler come back. I mean, come to the Warriors. I would like to see KD come back more than Jimmy Butler coming here. So I don't know. I have a lot of unpopular opinions, but I just know what I see, and I know what
No, that's honestly not an unpopular opinion. So I tweeted out last night just saying, hey, Dub Nation, are we on the same page? Like, do people want Jimmy Butler? And I will say like 80% of the responses were no. We want to pass on Jimmy Butler. There were 20% of people who said like, yeah, he could be really electric if he stays healthy with Steph. And like, I don't disagree, but I just think, as we pointed out, Steph, Klay, Draymond, your 3 leading guys in minutes, all being in their mid-30s, and then add in Jimmy Butler. Like, there has to be younger guys that can shoulder some of that workload. Like, what happens to being able to give Steph nights off or be able to manage minutes, which I know is unpopular with some NBA fans, but that's the reality. If you want to preserve a player and have him be at his best at the end of the season and still fresh, who's 36, 37 years old. So that's the reality of it. But it's been a pleasure having you on, Erin. Before I let you go, and we could just do this all day, but I want to hear about what are some of your 1 or 2 of your favorite experiences from covering the Warriors. You get to go live at games. You're on the floor a lot of times right there at practice and as the guys are warming up during all of the action. And I know you're a big hoops fan. Like, what's been the coolest part about covering the Warriors here the last year and a half or 2 years?
I don't know if this is an obvious one. It probably isn't, because covering the Warriors is a pretty cool job, obviously. But I have 2 top things. One, my top moment, it was the first time I think I was starstruck since I've started this business. Coming up as a female athlete, you just watch women that do the thing called basketball, and there are some of them that are just the cream of the crop. And everybody that knows me knows I am big on my wardrobe, and I love to put a lot of effort into what I wear. And actually, down towards the end of the stretch, it was the Warriors-Pelicans game, and it was on TNT, I believe, and Doris Burke was there. And I saw her walking towards me, and I was like, oh my gosh, that is Doris Burke walking, because she's just the pinnacle when it comes to what women can do in a game that doesn't necessarily belong to women on the men's side is what I mean. And she walked up to me and she complimented my jacket. She said, I love your jacket. And I couldn't even say thank you. And that's one thing I say way too much. I say thank you way too often. I didn't even say that. I literally looked at her and I said, coming from you, And then she just kind of looked at me like I was gonna say something else, but I was stunned. I was stuck, and I was just kind of like looking at her, and she was like, she kind of just awkwardly nodded and said, "Yeah, it's nice." And I was so starstruck because I was just watching her. I've always loved to model myself after successful women, and she's literally the pinnacle, especially for women in NBA. I mean, look at her now calling the finals, the first to ever do it. So it's just like, just to see that amount of greatness compliment on my jacket, I was like, goodness gracious, I've made it. Like, what is this? So that was a top moment. And then one random practice I was covering, I was in the middle of a dark hallway trying to get my look live to look presentable for television. And Chris Paul walked by and just kind of casually, like, nicely kind of said something to me and was really like courteous of like the fact that I was trying to get this look live right, and he waited, and he's a busy man, we know. And so I was just like, wow, this guy is, I grew up thinking that Chris Paul was like a dirty player a little bit.
Yeah, the villain, right? Like that's how he's made out to be.
Yeah. And so then I have this encounter with him one-on-one, and he's so nice. And I'm just like, that's CP3. What? And he's nice to me. Like, what is it? I didn't expect that. I mean, you expect Steve Kerr. I mean, you expect Steve Kerr to be nice. You expect Steph Curry to be nice. But Chris Paul, I didn't expect that. So those are my top two moments covering the Warriors here in the Bay. It's been an amazing ride. Oh my gosh. And I continue to be excited about what's to come here in the Bay. But those are my top two moments.
Oh my God, those are amazing moments. I would like faint if Doris Burke said that to me, because I'm on the same page as you, like seeing other women broadcasters who are at the top. And you pointed out she just became the first woman to serve as a game analyst on a television for a championship of any one of the men's professional sports out there, not just the NBA. Like that's unbelievable. It's long overdue. Glad to see it happen. She's a trailblazer, but I would literally like pass out. So good for you for keeping it together. Even if you made an awkward comment, it's better.
Awkward, Kylen. Oh my gosh. It was beyond awkward. I was like sweating. I couldn't believe myself. I never get starstruck because I'm one of those people that's like, you put your
we do this for a living. Like,
we do it for a living. And like, I just feel like if you're human, you put your pants on one leg at a time like I do. But that one, I could have sworn she jumped in two legs at a time. I mean, I was so starstruck.
I would be the absolute same. Well, it has been a pleasure, Erin. Thank you again so much for coming on. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with the local experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus our national shows covering every single league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Erin, thank you again. We're going to have to do this again because this was so much fun. Everyone, thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
This is amazing.